Are you a creative person? Did you know that creativity can boost our mood, relax us as well as meditation, and best of all, it's fun? Keep listening to learn how to use creativity as an avenue for expression, communication, and joy. Oh, and to answer my original question, yes, you are a creative person, even if you don't classify yourself as such. Welcome to Fading Memories, a podcast for caregivers of loved ones with dementia. I'm your host, Jennifer Fink. My mom had Alzheimer's for 20 years, and when I went looking for answers, I had to start a podcast to find them. Join me as we navigate the challenges of dementia caregiving together. Let's share our experiences, find solace, and discover the strength within us. Get ready to embark on a transformative caregiving journey with Fading Memories. Life throws us curveballs. Grief, illness, pet loss, feeling overwhelmed. You don't have to face these challenges alone. Introducing Help Text, expert support delivered conveniently straight to your phone. Weekly messages tailored to your specific needs, providing guidance and strength during difficult times. Whether you're caring for a loved one, grieving a loss, or simply just feeling lost, Help Text offers a supportive community and expert advice. Take back control of your well-being. Don't wait. Visit helptext.com/Fading Memories Podcast, or simply use the hot link in the show notes and sign up today for a 10% discount off your annual membership. That's helptext.com/Fading Memories Podcast for weekly messages that will improve your well-being and mental health with every notification. Invest in your well-being today. Hello and welcome to the Fading Memories Podcast. This is an awesome, I say that every week, talk today with Mary Crescenzo. I think I got that right. We are mostly talking about self-care through creative writing. We're going to touch a little bit on the arts and dementia engagement. She is the author of the new book, The Planet Alzheimer's Guide. So thanks for joining me, Mary.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Jennifer.
So the book came out this past spring, right?
Actually, it's 2021, and we have a new edition about to come out, but not too many changes. But yes, I wrote it during COVID. So that was one positive thing about that moment where I couldn't leave my house.
So what was the inspiration for the book, besides having a lot of time on your hands?
Well, I had worked at the time for 30 years in this field of arts engagement. It wasn't really a field at the time. I was one of the pioneers in creating methods and ways to communicate and connect with people with dementia, Alzheimer's, and cognitive decline. And so I wanted to share this with others. I had stopped doing the work myself as an arts practitioner, but I knew that if I could communicate with caregivers as to how they could do this, and anyone can do this, art and to get interaction with people that you love, that if I could do that in a book, then I could share that, I could speak about it. And so I thought, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And this was the time. So I just said, all right, I'm going to do it. And that way I could take that next step to really have a huger audience to share with others.
That makes sense. So before we were recording, I was telling you the story that my mom was very creative. She was a beautiful seamstress. Back when my sister and I were young in the 70s, we always had those matching mommy and me Christmas outfits, dresses, which I look back on and kind of cringe because some of those patterns were definitely 70s. She also did painting. I can't remember if it was acrylic or oil. She may have done both. And later on in life, even into the early stages of Alzheimer's, she did woodworking. So she was always trying new hobbies. But after my dad died and she moved to memory care, that was one of the first things I tried as an engagement while I was visiting, because I couldn't handle the same question every 5 minutes or 2 minutes. And so that was where I leaned to, is doing some very simple art projects. She was always afraid of doing it wrong, which made me want to just bash my head into the nearest wall or tree. I mean, we tried leaf rubbing, just like really easy stuff. Like you can't really do it wrong. But she
Hmm.
just kind of, I don't, so I've always wondered, was I like putting pressure on her that I wasn't aware of or,
It
you
could
know,
be a little bit of that expectations. Also, she knew that in some way, she knew that maybe her skills were not what they were, whether she could express that or not. And sometimes you think that painting would be more intimidating, but it really isn't, or even make singing, because in painting, I have what I call fluid engagement, where you don't say draw a tree or let's do this. Just start with the paints and be positive. And so sometimes that, even though it seems like painting, oh gosh, is more freeing to the mind. So, you did what you want, what you thought would be best. And sometimes I do things or have done things with clients and it doesn't work. So, what do? I redirect, I try another thing. But it's interesting that you said that she was worried that she would do it wrong, because I think you also mentioned that as an artist herself, she wanted to do things that were different. But in this case, something that she knew inside, maybe she couldn't accomplish this. So that might have been it.
that
But
could have been.
you're engaging either way. It's not working. Okay, no big deal. So
Yeah,
try
it was
something,
just very frustrating because
of course.
I tried all of the suggestions for positive engagement and having positive visits. And man, did she and I fail all of those. Just how the show came to be, because it got to the point where I'm like, this is back in the old days when one actually drove to a gym and took classes and drove home. And I was thinking, oh, I should find a podcast that talks about caregiving. And back in 2017, there was one. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And it wasn't my cup of tea, which is fine also. I like tea. I don't like coffee. It doesn't make coffee bad. I love the smell of it. So I thought I can't be the only family caregiver that has had this experience and is looking for advice. And so I figured, well, I might as well go find the people to talk to and do it in a podcast. So her fear of doing it wrong is what led me to doing this. So
There's
talk.
always, I'm
No,
sorry.
go ahead.
You said that, excuse me, it made, sorry, made me think that there is always some light to be found in the darkness of this disease. And this is the light. You have come out from necessity of that. So, yeah, so here you are.
Yeah, and I love talking to caregivers turn creative, which I think out of sheer desperation and necessity, there are a lot of us. So, but you were
Yes.
talking about fluid painting, which reminds me of a YouTuber that I like to watch. There's two of them. They're watercolor artists, and they teach like very basic. They've one of them's done kind of like a series of really simple, kind of cartoonish animals, like really cute. I'm like, as soon as I have some extra free time, I'm gonna try that because I've tried watercoloring before. But one of the things one of them talks about is just slapping color on. Pick whatever colors you want. Just slap the colors down. Doesn't matter. We're going to make something out of what looks like a mess. So that seems like something that you are also advocating to do with people with a cognitive impairment. So you want to
Yes.
explain a little bit about how that works?
Yes. Well, first of all, we all have the creative spirit in us, every one of us. And someone might be listening saying, oh, I can't draw, I can't paint. And what I always say to those people, and I say to you now as you listen, has anyone ever told you you can't? A teacher, a peer, a sibling? And I always get the answer yes. So, first of all, let's erase that from our brains and hearts. Everyone can be creative. We all have self expression, which then leads to, yes, even persons with cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, etc. So I create that concept, that setting, because it feels open. It feels safe. There are no wrong answers. Let's just put paint on the paper. And that makes someone feel calmer and also in the moment. They're
Hmm.
not thinking about, can I draw a tree? Can I do this? I'm not an artist. They're just doing that. And sometimes that turns into abstract, something quite beautiful sometimes. And it also starts sometimes to turn into representational art where you see faces or people. And then we start to talk about, oh, what do you see here? What would you like to call this painting? And the communication begins. I remember one woman telling me, that's my ugly brother. I'm like, okay. Or someone else had a person like going up a hill, like a little lamb going up a hill. Now these aren't, we're all creative. Some of us are blessed with a high level of talent, whether it's basketball or ballet or art, but we all can be creative. So there was this little lamb going up the hill. And I said, well, tell me about that. I don't want to say, what is that? Tell me about that. And she said, sometimes it's hard to get to where you need to be. And this woman was not all that verbal. So when you use the arts, not just painting, but singing, storytelling, movement, dance, what you begin to do is touch on what's inside, and truths come out that you never would expect. And that's the other thing. Don't have expectations. Just do it. And you as a caregiver will have fun too.
That's what I tried to do with my mom, was just something fun that wasn't, she always asked me, so what have you been up to lately? And I would answer. And I've now learned that I should have given her the same answer every time, but I thought I was being better. I always went and visited on Mondays. So it'd be like, oh, well, it's Monday. And I went to the gym and did spin with Jennifer today. The spin instructor's name was also Jennifer. And then she, like 2 minutes later, so what have you been up to lately? Well, it's Monday. I went to our Rotary meeting and there was a guest and they talked about X. 2 minutes later, well, it's, what have you been up to lately? It's Monday. I came to visit you. Now I realize I should have just given her the same answer all the time, because by breaking up what I'd actually been up to into little chunks that she could process, I was not giving her the same answer. So that's probably why she kept repeating it so much, which is really frustrating to learn at this late date. It's not going to help me at this point. But it's something that I've learned from a past guest. So that's shows me that, these conversations are definitely beneficial if I'm still learning things.
And
but
as a caregiver, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Well, I just wanted to do something other than, basically, she would have been absolutely thrilled to just sit around and shoot the breeze, which would have been great if we could have had a conversation.
Well, okay, so let me comment on that, if I might. First of all, as a caregiver, it's the most difficult job. It's the most worthy job, but there's no handbook for this. And that's also kind of why I wrote this book with my angle on it and direction. But okay, so maybe if you would have asked her what she do this week, you might get an answer that in your world makes sense, or you may get an answer that makes to you no sense at all, but that's okay. So now you redress that. Oh, you went to the beach? Oh, that was great. With grandpa? We know grandpa's no longer here, perhaps, but just meet the person you love where they are. And it becomes so less frustrating. Of course, there's a sadness to that because you know this person in a different way. But if you could just be in the moment with them, it's amazing how a new relationship happens. Again, you're mourning the loss of the old. If you stay in the present, I know people that had horrible relationships with their relatives, and they tried this, and now they had a brand new relationship. They were best friends. Isn't that crazy? Because now they're in a different world, which I call the planet Alzheimer's, and you have to enter that space. But it's not easy. You have your emotions, you have your memories. So that's why another thing about art is good, because again, it's in the moment. Now, Jennifer, you were a portrait photographer, right?
Yep.
Okay. And when you took those shots, you had to be in the moment. You weren't thinking about the bills or anything else. And so that moment became your art. And so if we could be in the moment, whether we're singing songs, we're dancing, or we're throwing scarves in the air, that's a joy that comes from inside.
I can always, sometimes there would be like this, I don't know how to describe it, but this feeling like, got it. And I did it for long enough. Even on shoots that were really tough, where 2-year-olds were literally ricocheting off the trees. Thankfully, with photography, you literally need a fraction of a second. And so you just keep going, and chances are you're going to get several images where the kid doesn't look like he's ricocheting off the trees. He might look super thrilled and happy, which is of course the expression you want. I always try to untrain parents from, please stop teaching your children to say cheese, because I would get the little jack-o'-lantern, squinty eyes, giant cheese. Oh, it's painful to do and it's painful to look at. But yeah, no, and I always channeled, like, if I was feeling one way about my mom, or like the family that got their family portraits taken probably less than 36 hours after my dad died. They did not know during the session that that was where I was at. And I just channeled all of my love for my dad and all of my complicated feelings for my dad into their session. And mom was really happy. And so when she picked up the final product, then I told her what was going on in the background. And she was like, oh my gosh, you should have canceled. We should have rescheduled. I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, life was going on, it wasn't going to do me any good to sit around and be sad. And I just channeled all of my emotions into their portrait. So it did everybody good. But my mom's answer to, when I would ask, I would tell her, well, this is what I've been up to. What have you been up to lately? Literally, I would get to, same old. Like, there's no entering that world.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's when you take out the paint. So you take out a Frank Sinatra, or the person that they love to listen to, and like, let's listen to this. It's always, let's see what happens, and just try it. But, just sometimes going for a walk in the garden, there's just so many ways, just you being there. Here's the thing about this disease. It's still a mystery. I went to this international conference, and in Krakow, Poland, there were 1,000 people there from all over the world, and it was on Alzheimer's and dementia. We had doctors there in the highest level saying, we're not 100% sure of why this disease is what it is. So the fact that it's such a mystery, we just have to go with what we know and just connect in whichever way that we can. If I may, you were talking about how you were trying to cope with the situation with not finding podcasts, and so it led you to create this one. That's how this creative writing, self-care for caregivers with creative writing, evolved. I had written, before the book was even written, I had written a play called Planet A, about the inner world of Alzheimer's. And it came from my work. So when I started this work, I would drive home crying every night because I saw the conditions people were living in. I saw the way they were treated. I saw just the disease itself. And I was young, and it upset me. So I thought, how do I process this so I can go back to work the next day? So I started writing these poems in the voices of the people that I saw, from observing what they said, from my imagination, and just to give them voice. And then I started singing, this is working. I can deal with this. I can manage my feelings. And so then I thought, well, if this works for me, shouldn't it work for caregivers who are directly firsthand in this? And so that's how I started doing that. And I realized that they enjoyed it. They had a safe place. They relaxed. They had a break. They found out things about themselves. They found energy, a renewed energy in their own lives. And it just gave them that safe space to express themselves. So sometimes out of frustration with something good comes, just like your show.
Which is interesting, because I've talked to people about journaling and self-care, and I've never been a journaler. And maybe it's because I'm surprisingly quite a very private person. And I've journaled in the past and gone back and read stuff, and it's like, I don't want other people to read these feelings or these thoughts. And so with my mom, there was no way I was journaling what I was thinking, because I would not want my daughter, even though she probably knew, or future strangers to like come back and be like, holy crap, this woman was like not happy with this situation. But I have been, and I need more time. I need about 48 hours a day. Been working on a book of the humorous stories from my mom's time in memory care, because, and this kind of goes back to how you were creating the poetry, is there are some serious characters in
Oh,
memory
yeah.
care. My mom befriended a couple of them. So, and they were all named Diane, all three of them. That's not confusing enough. And they got into like a little bit of mischief, never anything problematic, but just like you knew they'd been up to something because, excuse me, they rolled up the rug from my mom's room and moved it to another gal's room and like kind of hid it. I mean, like, why? Like, could somebody please explain these things to me? And there was one resident who was literally the worst klepto on the planet. If she laid her eyeballs on it, it was hers. And one day she put eyeballs on my purse. Thank God I saw her coming because I'm only 5'2". She was shorter than me, obviously older, obviously had some form of dementia. And I thought, I cannot get into a wrestling match over my purse with this woman because it's going to be elder abuse. Like, unless I give her my purse and then I'm not going to be able to get home. But we had a battle over my dog. We had a battle over my mom's dog. It was just, there was humorous stories. And then I described, like, why do people quote unquote steal? They're not really stealing. She just looked at my purse and thought, oh, that's pretty. I like that purse. It's mine.
It's pretty, or it is mine. I actually think it's mine, or it's also a way of control. Like I can have this because I mean, I'm not saying that these are the thoughts, but there's a lot of loss in them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something I can control, something that's mine. Because
And when I read back what I've written thus far, um, it just brings back all like the happy, positive memories, which when you look at it from afar, all you kind of remember was it was hard and I had these visits but when you like focus in on, there was also a gal there who was Irish and she literally paced. I think her family might have needed to help pay for the new carpet because she just walked constantly and she mumbled. She didn't speak clear words. And one day, my mom and I were planting seeds in egg cartons because I was making seedlings for my garden, and I was trying to figure out like how many seeds versus how many spots in the egg carton, and I verbalized a math question out loud. And I'm not a math person. I knew the answer because it was like basically basic multiplication, but this gal walked by and just popped out the answer clear as a bell, and I was like, I bet you she was in accounting or some number, something that I don't do. Because in the entire time I was, my mom lived there for 3 years, she would literally come up to you and mutter in your face. So she was talking to you, but you had no clue what she was saying. And she would try to hand you things. And one of the caregivers said, you have to be careful because she doesn't always hand you the nicest stuff. If she's come out of the bathroom, don't take anything out of her hands. Yeah, I was like, oh, thanks for the warning. I'm like, ugh. And this was pre-COVID. So you're like, ugh, was not fun. But yeah, so it's just like most of the time I didn't interact with her because she was in her own world. But just that one popping out of that basic multiplication answer was just fascinating.
It's amazing, like as you say, this all of a sudden this profound stuff. I want to, excuse me, I want to talk about the journaling, but that reminds me of a very bittersweet story I'll share with you. And I usually get emotional, so hopefully I can hold this together. We were painting, and I used to be an art teacher before I was an arts practitioner and community artist. And so we're painting. There was a new woman. She's painting, and she's painting. I had not really worked with her before. Working, feverishly on newspaper, anything to paint. And I usually didn't ask about the person's past life first. I wanted to meet them where they were. And then when I find out something later, like this person could have been a math person, then I can put two and two together. And she's painting and painting. And all of a sudden, someone says to me, well, she was an art teacher. I lost it.
Oh, yeah.
I just started crying, and I would never do that at work. And the tears are running, and nobody knew what to say. And she knew. And this woman had a face like this. She wasn't paying attention to anybody. She didn't speak. She reached in her pink robe pocket, gave me a tissue.
Oh, cute.
Wasn't that amazing? Just amazing moment. But there's those moments of lucidity that we can't discount because they could be in there. And can art bring those things out? Yes, it can often. So back to journaling, I want to clarify my creative writing with caregivers is not journaling, perhaps, because that's a heavy thing to begin. And I also say you can share it with someone, you can not share it with anyone. You can throw it away. You can save it for your daughter when you're not around, and she might help to be understanding more of what you were going through. But what I'll do is I'll start with like a word, like let's write about hands. Whose hands? Your hands, someone you know. Let's write about a kitchen you remember, a kitchen you'd love to have. And so this starts neutral, but those feelings about being a caregiver will find their way into that. And as they're writing, this begins to grow from that neutral space. So I try to do it that way. I'm not a journaler either, just like, so that's why I thought, well, let's try this. And it's really, it's a great feeling when you get those feelings out on paper. And again, you don't have to share them with anyone, just yourself. It'll make you feel better.
Well, you said hands, and my first thought was thinking about my mom. My mom liked to bake. Now, she didn't bake from scratch. We were always like the Betty Crocker, cake mixes and stuff. I don't think it was as easy back then as it's like I make cakes and stuff from scratch, and I find them better. But brownies aren't always better. I like the mixes. And then you said kitchen. So obviously I'm like tying those all back to my mom. So I thought that was kind of an interesting that my very, very first, it wasn't even a whole thought, it was a flash of a picture, was I did a portrait of technically 5 generations. One of them was missing. So it was like a 2 times great grandmother, great grandma. I think it was great grandma was deceased, grandma, mom, baby. And we had all their hands together. It was just like, it just told the story of time.
Oh,
Just this
beautiful.
one image of all these, you get the little baby hand and the 100-year-old woman hand. It's very different.
But you could see how just that one word, which is neutral, sparked all these memories for you and all this emotional response. And that's what this writing is about, because you got to put your feelings somewhere. And maybe you
Hmm.
don't want to tell your sister who doesn't really understand that you're the caregiver and she's not, so don't tell me what to do, kind of thing. Or someone who says, oh, doesn't understand it. You're telling yourself by putting it on paper. And then when you reflect on it, you can say, like, okay, it's all right, and I just did something and I wasn't thinking of caregiving. I was just writing. So yeah, it's interesting how that word opened that up for you.
I'm gonna have to try this on some of my friends. So for my birthday, I like to do, I'm at the age where it's like, I'll buy the craft supplies I need. Maybe you could buy me a gift card if you really want, but I'd rather do experiences. And I had seen on HGTV, I don't even remember which show, but the host had taken the family to a paint splatter studio. I'm like, that's cool. There's got to be one of those in Sacramento. I mean, like, hello, it's the state capital. And lo and behold, there was. It's very new, owned by a woman of color. So I'm like, bang, entrepreneur woman-owned entrepreneurial business, woman of color, I'm there. So I said, this is what I want to do for my birthday. Our 2 friends, who are essentially scientists, especially the one who works with hazardous waste materials, I didn't need to see her face to know that she was like, ugh, I'll do this for you. And I think once she relaxed into it, at first it's like everything is covered in paint. You put on the smock and everything to cover your clothes, and then you touch something and your hands are covered in paint. And she was that kind of gave her the ick. But once she got into it, like her and her husband and my husband, who's a real estate broker, they were all having like their 3 paintings were amazing. And it's just, and my husband really got into it. I was shocked. I was trying some different stuff, so I like theirs actually better than mine. But it was like, I was just thrilled because it's like, just go with it. I'm like, just throw the paint on the canvas. It doesn't matter if it's going to hit the wall. That's already happened in here. And I think they had a good time. It took her a little time to kind of chillax into it. But I was surprised that, because she was so reluctant in the
Well, it's,
beginning.
it's play, and we forget how to play. We forget how to be artists when we're young. We're painting and doing things like that. So it's just opens things up. And again, you found yourself, and she found herself reluctantly in the moment, and then she let it go. So that is what happens, and you don't have to be an artist to do that. It just go there and open it up for yourself, whether even singing. People say, I can't sing. Okay, so you may not have a voice like a famous singer, but you can try, you can sing, you can enjoy it, movement, all of these things. Um, and I guess I've known this since I was a child because I happen to be a very creative person, and I am an artist in certain ways. And I do have, I think, that little bit of elevated, like a basketball player might have, because it's something I can't help but do all my life. But, you receive criticism about that. And then when you're younger, and then you just like hide it. But it's there. And I knew that these people, as wanted to mention to you, although I started in the mid 70s, with a career, when I graduated high school, which was probably 10 years before that, um, I wanted to get a job before I went to college, and I saw this ad for an art teacher in what was called a nursing home at the time. And I wasn't a teacher yet. I became one. But I thought I could do this. They didn't care, like, really who came in and did this, to be honest with you. And I went in there and I started working with a room of people that I think, and when I look back, had dementia. Some did, some didn't. And I just said, well, I know that I can have fun with art. So I guess they can too. It was kind of very naive in a sense, so natural to me. And we were talking, painting, crying, laughing, telling stories of World War II. Um, and I just saw the joy. And so that stuck with me. And I also have a thing for older people now. I'm one of them. But because my grandfather was so important in my life, and he died when I was 9. And so I remember the 9 years of just amazing relationship with him. So I just have this reverence. So as a teenager, I'm like, I get these people. And later on, when I started doing this work, I said, I know this can work. So I want, and if you're thinking of this, and the book itself, by the way, talks about different forms of art. You don't have to be an artist. The person you're working with doesn't have to be an artist. Just try it and see what happens. Doesn't work? Bring a song the next time. Doesn't work? Bring some scarves and move around, carefully if the person is physically not as able. Tell stories. Start a story. Read a poem that from that person's era. I don't know if you remember many years ago, we had to memorize poems. They don't do that in school anymore.
I think we did a little bit.
A little bit, right? Me too. So if you bring a poem from that person's era, or you can start reading it. Sometimes I get people like saying the next line, even if they don't, even if they just sit there and listen. You are not just staring at each other. And that is what I hear often when I speak to people who are caregivers. They say, I wish I knew this when I was with my husband, because I would go there and spend 2 hours and I didn't know what to do with him. We just would kind of stare at each other. These are things you can try. Whether they work or not, you can try them. And don't give up.
One of the things, so my listeners, most of them should remember, I started handmade card making during the pandemic, because there's something that you can give away and people like it. And then you make more and you give them away. It's a very satisfying hobby. But one of the things that's really interesting is they will tell you, if you're using an inking technique, or you take the wet ink and spray it on the paper and you're like, ooh, I don't like that. They're just like, just keep adding more stuff, which is really counterintuitive. It's like, I don't like this. There's so many ways to cover up spots you don't like on your background, which generally are 4.25 by 5.5. I think I got that right. Yeah. It's like a quarter of a sheet of paper. Just keep going. Like, you look at it, you think, that's okay. add more ink, add more splatters, I'm like, I never understood splatters, but man, I sure like splatters now. And it's something I do regularly because sometimes, you got a Monday that just makes you want to tear out your hair, and maybe I don't have time to make cards. Sometimes I'll just go through the backgrounds I've already made, or let me go through my tools. And like my husband asked me to make a card for his friend's birthday, and it's like, okay, let me like think that one through. Even if I spend like 20 minutes just thinking it through, I don't even have to physically do the activity, just kind of sorting through the papers and looking at, he said he wanted it to be a fishing theme, which I don't have very much stuff for that. And it's like, okay, well, how do I want to start? Do I want to like use the one stamp that's got a fishing pole on the background, or, and you kind of channel your mind into that direction. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, okay, I don't feel like murdering people right now. I don't feel as tense and
Exactly.
frustrated. And it's really, really interesting. Sometimes even just cleaning up. I'm a pretty organized, neat person. So like work week, the desk does not look like my crafty desk. It does not look like it does on the weekend. Sometimes just organizing and cleaning and getting all your supplies back exactly where you want them. And it's
It's a
just very
focus.
zen. Yeah.
There isn't. It's a focus, and that's what all these different art forms are. They're just a focus, whether you accomplish something or don't. It's just a focus away from everything else that is a difficult task for caregivers, and also everything else for the person who is dealing with the frustrations of dementia. So it's a focus. It's in the moment, and I think we often don't let that creativity shine. And so, even cleaning up, even organizing, doesn't it feel good cleaning out your closet? Because you're taking things, ordering them, putting in different places, creating something new visually, right? Than what you had.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's a creative act. So, that's why we have this. We never get a chance to let it out. And every time we do, I know that some people that, oh, I can't do that. I can, but when you let it out, it feels good. Have you ever danced without smiling? Who does
No.
that? Sing without just feeling good, whether you're laughing at yourself or not. So, yeah, it happens. Again, art is not, it feels magical, but it's not. It's scientific. In our brain, there are centers that want to be unique and creative, as each of us are. And that's where I found that, again, you can let joy into the darkness of this disease. And it's a horrible, difficult disease to deal with. But it just seems to often work. And just, again, see what happens, try it again, don't give up.
I'm going to use that line on my scientist friends. Art is scientific. It's proven science. I'm going to watch their brains explode for a minute. It's going to be
Well, if
fun.
they know anything about Einstein, they know he played the violin. And so his science is creative. It's just in a different way.
That's true.
Yeah. So yeah, and
I
see what.
I I think on her part, she overthinks things.
Mhm.
She's working on a report. She's retired, but she's contracting back, and she's working on a report. And so she works for Sandia Labs, which is headquartered in New Mexico, and there's a one in the Bay Area. And the report's got a photograph from Albuquerque and one from Livermore, and she wanted them to be similar. I mean, obviously the terrain is different, and she was concerned. It was a photo of like the landscape outside the lab at night. It was at sunset. And she was afraid it was too dark. So of course she asked me, "Is this too dark?" And I looked at the other image. I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Are you going to print this?" Because this is where the technical aspect of being a photographer comes into play. If she was going to print it, yes, it was probably too dark because the paper would have sucked in all the black ink and it would have turned into mud. I didn't explain that to her because she probably would have understood that, but she says no, it's all digital. I'm like, okay, no, it's totally fine, and I explained to her why because I knew she needed to know why. But I think if she had just looked at it, like, do they look good together? Would I hang them on the wall together? But no, she was like, I don't know what she was overthinking. Just
Scientific mind. She was thinking
yeah,
in a different way. Yeah.
which I find fascinating. So, do you have any more? Because we seriously been talking all about creativity, which is awesome because it's my favorite topic. But do you have any other like prompts for starting like a self care creative writing Habit?
Yes. One good thing about my workshops that I do, whether I do them on Zoom or I do them with one person or I do them at a big conference, is I'm there and I give you the opportunity with these different words, but I'm not going to be with you all the time, right? So what are you going to do when you can't think of which words to use and you're not sure? Look out the window, look at the first thing that you see, write about it. Think of a noun, person, place, or thing. The first thing that comes to your mind, put it on the top of the paper and then just write about it. So you can sustain this therapy, so to speak, with yourself without having me and the prompts. So I never want to choose a prompt that's too, what's the word, igniting. So once I
Okay.
use the prompt keys, and after the conference, it was actually on a Zoom, she said, that was really, what is the word? Like not a red flag, when something really like is in your face. She goes, that one was a little too much. For her, I guess maybe being in the nursing home for her relative or in the care place, locking it or losing the keys, remembering her mom lose the keys. Again, that's subjective. Somebody else might find that to be a great prompt.
Because
So
I didn't find that one triggering or,
it was
you know,
triggering to her, and she said, "Oh, but okay." So I learned too from what people say. But I think if you just on your own, so I do try to get more neutral words, um, but just look out the window or think of a color and find something going on there or a noun, and just start writing. And don't be your own editor. Don't like, oh, spelling is wrong. Oh, this isn't right. Grammar's wrong. That takes away the creativity. What it's called is free write. Put your pen on your paper for 2 minutes. Look at the word, just start writing. Don't take your pen off the page. Even if you have to say, I hate this project. Why did Mary tell me to do this? I don't want to do this. You're still writing. And then the rest of what you really want to say, but you're afraid to, will begin to flow on the paper. So those are my suggestions. Just neutral words, write them down, put them on the top. And you know what? If you want to do a doodle underneath, you want to do a little picture, do that too. I can tell you from my own experience when I was, crying and upset and needed a way to manage my interaction with persons with dementia. I can tell you that it will give you respite. These are the 4 words that I use: respite, break, relaxation, rejuvenation, more energy, and revelation about who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the circumstance, and really will set you apart from those feelings that are inside of you that you sometimes don't have time to deal with because you're doing everyday routines with the person that you love. So try it, see what happens.
when I look out the window, I see trees. But
Okay.
also, if I look closer to the window, there's a mobile that my friend made out of bicycle parts. So the, where the chain connects to,
Yes,
the chain
yes.
ring is what it's called. And it's pinks and blues. It's my favorite colors. And the hummingbird feeder. And that's about it because there's a lot of trees.
So I'd say pick like hummingbird, like maybe one word. If you start saying, oh, the mobile and with the chain, that kind of gets a chain, hummingbird, leaf.
Well, when I think of hummingbird, I think so. We have a feeder. The way our house is it looks like a single story, but it's on a slope. So the additional bedrooms in my office are all downstairs. So most of the square footage is upstairs. And when you go out the back, we have a big deck. So it's up a floor. So we have a bird feeder on that deck and a bird feeder underneath the deck outside my office window. And these hummingbirds, I probably could write a lot about these hummingbirds because I've learned that they're very curious animals. I've had them literally buzz through my hair several times, which is a little disconcerting, especially because it's like, you are what, maybe a 2 ounce little critter and you're like attacking me? I'm the one filling the feeder, you little monster. And, they're extremely territorial. So there's frequently I call them bird bombings. They just fly over you, bzzz, and they fly at each other. And it's like, you kind of feel like you're underneath some World War II planes. At least I would assume I wasn't around then. And it's entertaining. It's humorous. It's kind of jogs your curiosity because, you just kind of wonder. And I've had to look up, like their lifespan because there's one particular one, that little turkey literally would hang out in the oak tree and watch the feeder. And if somebody else came by, shoom, he'd swoop on, and his wings were really loud. So we call him Buzzwinger. If he's still around, this would probably be his last summer because it'd be their third summer here. So
And
yeah,
they
I could
come
do
back. They come
yeah.
back every year.
Well, I'm assuming that if Buzzwinger doesn't make his own reappearance, Buzzwinger Jr. probably will. And it's just,
we in
it's,
Southern California have the same. We've got a deck and we've got them, and I love to watch them. They're not afraid to come by near you, and that buzz over my head, I kind of like it. And they're resilient, and they're tiny, and they're fast, and sometimes they fight with each other, but other times they're nurturing. And when I go out to that deck and I look at them, I just forget everything because nature is a form of art that's given to us, Mother Nature, or from God, wherever we feel it's coming from. And it's amazing to watch. And again, what is it? Focus. My breathing changes. My office is a mess. I got to walk away from it. My breathing changes. I'm just focused on this one thing of wonder. And that's what
yeah.
happens when you make art and your breathing changes. And when you're writing, it's a physical thing. And sometimes we need that just by a hummingbird. So I love them, but they drive me crazy sometimes.
Yeah, did you know their tongues are longer than their beaks?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
like really strange.
Have you ever had one like hit the wall and then they go down or they're fighting? I've had that on the deck, and we've picked them up in our hands and just like blew some warm air on them and just kind of pet them, and they're still stunned. And then I go get the little dropper and I feed them the sugar water, and it's like a miracle in my hand. And then all of a sudden they wake up and they fly away. And to me, that is the most incredible moment that I've ever experienced with them. So I love them. I respect them. And yeah, they're a gift of nature.
Yeah, they're very interesting little beings. So real quick, since we're talking about hummingbirds, if
Yes.
somebody is struggling to start writing and
Mhm.
because they're having a hard time getting out of their head, like I'm not creative, I don't know what to, could
Yes.
you just start by writing like so hummingbirds, you've got buzz, you've got wings, you've got beak. Could you just start like writing words that you
Yes.
associate with hummingbird? And that would be
Yes.
a
Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea. Just write the words that connect with that noun or that verb or that hummingbird or something. Write the words down, and then just begin from there. See what jumps off the page. The other thing you can do is you can write about them, but when you like write a paragraph and you think, this is very like clinical. I'm not getting any of my emotions out. Why is that? Because you're defending that, afraid. So go in there and circle the 5 words that seem most interesting to you in that very even thing you wrote. And now try for each of those words to write something, and just write whatever comes to mind. Don't worry about anything else. So yeah, words are great. Pick them from a paragraph that's not going anywhere. That's like kind of a guard, and you're guarding yourself with it. Or look at that object and write the words. Use your 5 senses, and don't forget sense of smell. And don't be afraid to be creative. Like the sky smells like cotton balls. I mean, okay, that's crazy. But if that comes to mind, keep writing because it's yours. You own it. You're unique. You can't help but create uniquely, and you can do it. And so can the person with dementia. Just be open, fluid guidance. Don't say this is good, this is bad. Just start a conversation from it.
that makes sense. My mom loved hummingbirds, so I can imagine asking her What do you think of hummingbirds? Do you like hummingbirds? Um, what's neat about just ask like really simple questions that are usually fairly easy to answer. And even if they say, well, hummingbirds are really big and they're really quiet. I'm like, okay, write that down.
And
And
get a book of hummingbirds and open it up, or an art book. And like, let's look at what color is this? When she says it or not, start looking at a book together of beautiful pictures of things that she loves, maybe to someone who loves cars. That's going to bring back memories, right? And
mhm.
it does bring back those fading memories, even for an instant. Sometimes the arts can bring out stories from the past, as conversations can too. I honor all of you, every caregiver who is listening, and you, Jennifer, as well, because I came to this without knowing anyone who had this disease. And so in a way, you might be thinking, oh, it's easier for you because it's not someone you grew up with. And so I so respect what all you have to, that you must do. It's a difficult task. But now every person that I've worked with, I feel they're my family and I can remember their names. And so the work that you do is so valuable. Give yourself a break, caregiver, and do some writing or some form of creativity. You deserve it.
They do. And what's nice about a lot of what we've talked about is it's something you can do in a very short period of time and get the benefits, even if you only have 5 or 10 minutes. Like I was saying earlier, sometimes just thinking through a project, looking through my stuff, my tools, it's just like, I guess because you're in the moment, you're not thinking about the 500 things you got to do this week, or the dishes that are sitting in the sink, or you got to deal with your loved one. You're just spending 5 minutes just thinking about something fun. And
Right.
it is amazing how much of a stress release that can be. So yeah,
Absolutely. Persons that
definitely.
I've worked with taught me so many, people with dementia taught me so many things about life. And one of the most important things they taught me was live in the moment, because that's all you have. And so that's exactly what you're saying. Be in that moment and it'll be freeing for you, even only for a short period of time. Then you have to get back to the reality of what you have to do. Let that work for you.
Well, that's a great place to stop. I really appreciate this conversation. You guys are definitely going to want to grab Planet Alzheimer's Guide because it's got all kinds of creative ways to engage with your loved one. And if you're anything like Mary and I, being creative is so freeing and so relaxing that even your scientific friends will understand.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Are you looking for additional advice, suggestions on a catch-up episode to listen to, or simply an easy way to get in touch with me? Then you definitely need to sign up for the weekly email newsletter. It is super short, chock full of excellent information, and I do not spam you at all. So, the link for the newsletter is in the show notes. Just click on it, sign up, and you will not regret hearing from me every Wednesday morning. And now, here's a taste of what you can expect next Tuesday.
I don't think for most people, you don't have to make any decisions in those initial conversations for most people. I would say those initial conversations are more to get like a second conversation so that they're willing to talk to you on a second occasion as things change. I would say that is the purpose. And I would also say that the purpose is really to help them and help you get comfortable talking about something that is hard and that's emotional. And I think for most people, unless you're like in the hospital, in the ICU and things are moving fast, that's a very different situation. For most people, you don't have to make any decisions right then and there because you're probably still processing and they're probably still processing.